Starting a 4-week series called The Storyteller that's all about the stories Jesus told. And here's one thing I know is that people love stories, right? So if you don't know my daughter, Annalie, here's a picture of her from this morning. It was the 100th day of school, and they got to dress up like old ladies or old people. I asked her to come in tonight to help me share this story, and here was her story why she couldn't. Because one day I'm going to be a trainer at SeaWorld, and I need to get ready for that. Makes no sense, whatever, you know? But for the last 2 years, I've told Annalie the same story every night before bed, and she doesn't want it changed. She wants the same story. And so here's how the story starts. I think I was reading Game of Thrones when I made the story up, and so that's why there's dragons in it, I think. I don't. But it's once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a beautiful princess named Annalie. Everyone loved Princess Annalie because she was so kind, except the mean dragon. And one night, the dragon came and snatched up Princess Annalie. Now, there's 2 versions. We can go one way or we can go the other way at this point. Sometimes we swap it up. Version 1 is Annalie is also a doctor in addition to being a princess. This was her edition because she loves Doc McStuffins. And so the reason the dragon is so angry is because he has a toothache. And so Annalie fixes his tooth, and then they become best friends, and she rides the dragon all over. And so, you know, there's a point there, right? I mean, I can make a point there that sometimes people are mean because they've got something going on in their life, and they need you to help them. Well, the other version is I come and kill the dragon. And the point there is if you hurt my daughter, I'll hurt you, right? Very much less spiritual than the other one. But people love stories. Anna remembers both of those stories. She can recite them to you. She can tell you everything just like I told you, probably better, probably more animated. She can tell you both versions because we love stories. It's why it takes you an hour to read 1 page in a textbook for school, but you can read 100 pages in a novel in an hour. I got super into the Divergent books. I don't know why, they're for teenagers, but I got super into them. And when I finished the book, spoiler alert, I was so angry that she died, and it was like at midnight, and we're laying in bed, and I threw the book and said, "You've got to be kidding me." And Joy was like, "You need to get your life together. This is a book for teenagers." But I was like disturbed for weeks. We get involved with stories. We love stories. And honestly, there are certain stories that make learning a lesson easier. And they communicate truth in a way that sticks with us rather than just some propositional statement. And so this is why Jesus told stories all the time. Instead of saying, "Let me give you the top 10 reasons God loves you," Jesus would say, "Let me tell you the story about how God loves you." Because we remember stories. Now, Jesus' stories were called parables, which means they have a spiritual meaning behind the story. And so for the next few weeks, we're going to look at some of the parables that come from him, stories that had a lot of meaning to the original people, but still have a lot of meaning to us. And to start, we're going to look at a story Jesus told that was recorded by Luke. It's probably one of the most famous stories Jesus ever told. But Luke gives us some context to the audience that Jesus is talking to before Jesus jumps into the story. Luke says, tax collectors and other notorious sinners, I just love that phrase, notorious sinners, often came to listen to Jesus teach. In other words, bad people love to hang around Jesus the so-called bad people, the sinners, the tax collectors. They loved to be around Jesus, but that bothered the religious people. And in that culture, it was kind of obvious to them. It was pretty black and white for them who the good people were, who the bad people were. And so here's more of this crowd. This made the Pharisees and teachers of the law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. He wasn't just talking to them, he was inviting them to have a meal with him, and they didn't like that. Jesus, you shouldn't be around these people. And it's kind of easy for us to think that the religious people were probably just a bunch of critical jerks. But a lot of us are the same way. If you consider yourself a good person, someone that's in church a lot, someone that is in youth group, you do the right things, you see someone that has a bad reputation for the things that they do, and it becomes easy to look down on people like that. This is what these religious people were doing. And I've seen this in action. When I was in college, I went to a First Baptist church my first Sunday in college, and I saw this guy walk in to the church. You know, First Baptist churches, I'd get kicked out for wearing what I'm wearing. You need to be dressed nice. Well, he walks in shorts, a t-shirt, and a hat. And this lady walks up and punches him in the head and says, "We do not wear hats in God's house." And he was so embarrassed that he got up and left because she had this idea that I'm this holy person, I am this church person, I know what's right and that's wrong, so you need to change. You're not as good as I am. Now, you would never say you would do that, but it's easy to fall into that trap. And so for those of us who, see yourself as a church person, I'm a good person, I don't get grounded, I don't mess up, I don't do a lot of bad things, it's easy to look down on others at times. But you may see yourself on the other side and feel like people treat you like one of those sinners. They look at you based on your reputation or a few mistakes you've made, and they look down on you. This is the tension that Jesus is dealing with when he tells this story, and it's basically a tension that has never gone away because we feel like in order to be good with God, people have to behave a certain way. This is a tension that people dealt with in the time of Jesus. It hasn't changed in over 2,000 years. We feel like in order to be in with God, people have to behave a certain way. That's why you don't wear a hat in church, because you need to behave a certain way. Brittany. So Jesus started by telling this really short story about a shepherd who has 100 sheep, but he loses one. So he leaves the 99 to find the one. Then he tells a story about a woman who has 10 coins and she loses one. She doesn't really care about the other 9. She tears her house apart to find the one lost coin, and both people celebrate. They throw a party when they find what was lost. So then he goes in to the main story, the feature presentation, right? And here's how he starts. To illustrate the point further, Jesus told them this story. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now before you die." So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. So basically, this son tells his father, "I know you're going to leave me a lot of money when you die. The problem is you're not dead yet. So can I just go ahead and get that money now?" Basically, he's saying, "Dad, I wish you were dead so I could have the money you're going to leave me." Kind of a slap in the face. And for some reason, instead of the dad, throat punching him, he's like, "All right." And he gives him the money. So a few days later, this younger son packed up all his belongings, moved to a distant land, and there wasted all of his money in wild living. So he's like that guy that wins the lottery, and then a couple months later, that $1 million or millions of dollars is zero, because he doesn't know how to spend his money. He just totally wastes it. And to make matters worse for this son, as soon as he runs out of money, the land is in a famine. So about the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. So the son goes from so rich to so poor that he wants to eat what the pigs are eating. And I don't know if you've ever seen what a pig eats, but I've never once wanted to eat it. I have never once been so hungry that I wanted to eat what a pig eats. So he's in a bad spot. He has gone from being taken care of and having money in his father's house to now taking care of pigs, wanting to eat what they're eating but can't because it belongs to the pigs and not him. But thankfully, the story doesn't end there. Jesus continues, when he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he returned home to his father. So the boy understood that the father's servants lived way better than him. So he was going to go home and say, Dad, I don't even want to be your son anymore. I just want to be one of your servants so I can have a little bit of money for some food and a place to sleep. I know I messed up, but that's all I'm asking for. Now listen, if you would have been in the original audience while Jesus was telling this story, you're kind of expecting, like, if this was me, if this was my kid, right, I don't know what I would do. But because it's Jesus telling this story and he's good, you know it's going to have a somewhat happy ending, right? So you're expecting Jesus to probably say, the father was upset, the father was really, really angry at him, but he accepted him back as a servant, paid him minimum wage, enough to get some food and a place to sleep. And that would have probably been a good ending, more than this guy deserved. I mean, he told his dad, I wish you were dead. Just give me the money you're going to give me when you die. But that's not how the story ends. Jesus continues and says, while the son was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with compassion, filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. Now, every time I read this verse, I always think to myself, I always put myself in this kid's shoes. If I had told my dad, give me my inheritance, I don't care about you, and I went and wasted it, and I'm on my way home and I see my dad running at me out of the house, like, I'm going to run the other way because I think my dad's coming to tackle me or something or punch me. I mean, he's not coming to hug me and kiss me. But that's what this father does. He comes and embraces his son. It's like he was saying, I don't care that you wasted this money. I just care that you're here. And so the story continues. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his fingers and sandals for his feet, and kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found. And so the party began. The son was expecting to be treated like a servant, but the dad wasn't interested in that. He's saying all has been forgiven. Consider it over and done with. I don't see your mistakes. I just see you. And I want to celebrate that my son who was lost now is found. And it's a good time now to remember the two groups of people who are listening to this story. The sinners in the crowd, this is a message unlike any they have ever heard. you're telling me that there's no punishment for his mistakes. The father doesn't try to get even with him. The father just completely accepts him in his mess as he is. They've probably never heard a message like that. Now, the religious crowd, they don't like this message, right? They're like, first of all, this makes the dad look like a fool, that he's not willing to make this son be responsible for his mistakes. And it's just setting the son up for more failure, because now he knows I can do the worst to my dad and he's just going to forgive me. And so I can go do something dumb again and my dad will just forgive me. There should be some kind of distance between the father and the son. The son messed up and someone needed to pay. The religious people would have seen the story like that. Jesus still isn't done with the story, because he talks about the older brother who is out working in a field and hears there's a party for the younger brother. And so meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working, and when he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house, and he asked one of the servants what was going on. It's kind of interesting that instead of going to look for himself, he asks a servant. Already you can see he's upset because he knows the party's not for him. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fattened calf. We are celebrating because of his safe return. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in, and so his father came out and begged him, but he replied, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat for a feast with my friends. I am also mad that my father never gave me a young goat. I like it. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. His father said to him, look, dear son, you have always stayed by me, and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he is found. And that's the end of the story. And so we know the father celebrates the younger brother returning. We know the other younger brother is at this party, probably amazed that people are celebrating that he's back. But we don't know what happens with the older brother, because the story ends with him standing outside pouting. Now, you understand where he's at, right? Like, if you were in his position, you would probably be like, this is messed up. My brother doesn't deserve this. He did absolutely nothing to deserve this. But yet here I am, the one who's done everything right, and this party's not for me. That's what makes this story one that people don't forget. Jesus was looking at his audience, the sinners, the religious people, the ones who felt like they had done everything wrong, the ones that had felt like they had done everything right. And he knew that they both agreed that the younger son should have to pay for his mistakes, and the older brother should be rewarded for what he's done right. And instead, they got something totally different. A younger brother who doesn't fix anything. He shows up a mess and his father accepts him. And an older brother who's done everything right but yet doesn't get a party thrown for him. Jesus completely flips the script in this story. And to the people who were unsure whether or not they were qualified enough or had done enough to be in a relationship with Jesus, Jesus says one of the most powerful things he says in any story in the New Testament, and that's, you don't have to be fixed to be found. You don't have to have everything together before you come home. In fact, you can come home completely in your mess. Think about how the younger brother comes home. He's probably covered in pig crap. He's covered in pig food. Who knows what he's wearing? And yet the father runs up and hugs him and kisses him. That's disgusting. The father accepts him in his mess. But to the religious leaders who were frustrated and angry because Jesus seemed too soft on sin, the story says you need to be careful because you don't get to decide how fixed someone needs to be before they are found. You don't get to decide what someone needs to do or can't do in order to be right with Jesus. That has nothing to do with you. In fact, the twist here is that Jesus was telling them, you guys think you are all fixed up and perfect, but you are the ones who are lost. At the end of the story, the brother who has spent his life doing everything right is the one who is outside the party, not the one who has spent his life doing everything wrong. And so Jesus tells these people who are confident in their righteousness, be careful because you're the ones that are going to end up lost. So the incredible thing about this story is that its message still matters today. For the people who think they're gone too far, they've messed up too much, they're dealing with something that they just can't get over, Jesus says, I will never give up on you. He's not waiting for you to fix something or get something in order before you come home. He just says, come home. No matter where you are or what you've done or what you're dealing with, the incredible truth of this story is Jesus says, you are still worth finding. No matter how much you've screwed up, you are still worth finding. And for the people who are making good decisions and feel like they're doing everything right, which is great. It's good to make good decisions. But Jesus says, don't ever give up on someone else. Remember that everything you have is because of the Father, so don't become self-righteous where you're confident in the things you do and think you are better and more deserving than other people. Because you may find yourself standing outside the party whining about who was let in. And then here you are missing it all together and then you miss the grace of the Father. My freshman year of college, I was at a school called Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's not at the Grand Canyon. Sorry, this thing is, no, it fell off again. $1,000 mic, and we can't get it to stay on my face. It's not at the Grand Canyon. It's in the middle of the worst part of Phoenix. It's surrounded by barbed wire fences. We often saw helicopters flying over, chasing a criminal that had jumped the fence and was on campus. Not a safe place, not a pretty place. And every Monday night, there was a worship service at a church that was just on the corner of the campus. And I went to that worship service often, and one night, this homeless guy wandered in, and he sat at the back because he knows church people are real judgy, right? He's a homeless guy, he's not dressed nice, he smells, he doesn't look good. Church people probably will judge that. That's not a good thing. It's just the way things are sometimes. In the course of the service, God is doing something in his life, and he comes to the front and sits right in front of me. And he smells horrible. Like you can see like that his hair is all greasy. It hasn't been washed in a super, super long time. And he raises his hands. He starts to worship. And some of you have heard this story before. And he starts yelling out, God, you are so effing awesome. And he doesn't abbreviate effing. He says it. And people are like, shh. And he just says it louder. Which he's not wrong, right? I mean, that's true. There's probably a more appropriate way to say it. But I remember thinking, oh, I'm so glad I'm not like this guy. I'm so glad that I have my life together so much more than this guy does. And essentially what I was saying was, God, I'm so thankful I don't need your grace as much as this guy does. Jesus says in this story, be careful, because when you become self-righteous and you look down on others, you're in a lot of danger of becoming more lost than this so-called sinner. And so what I love about this story is that all at once, it offers incredible hope. To those of us who are messing up or struggling with something, Jesus says, just come home. You do not have to fix anything. But at the same time, it's a slap in the face. It's a huge challenge to those of us who think we're better. And so the question today is, who are you in this story? If you consider yourself one of the good kids, the kids that's doing everything right, I want you to think a moment about the people who you believe need to be fixed before they can find a place with God. Who are the people you look at and you're like, man, they have a lot of work to do before they can come to my youth group or before God accepts them? Will you give me the black mic? I don't like this thing just dangling right here. I tried to do it, can't anymore. The people that Jesus misses the most. So think about your friends that don't have a relationship with Jesus. Think about how much Jesus misses those people. If Jesus doesn't think they need to be fixed, then why do you? Now, if you would say, like, I wouldn't call myself a notorious sinner, which makes me kind of think of the notorious one, Conor McGregor. Like, I would not call myself a notorious sinner. But yeah, I struggle with things. I understand that people look down on me sometimes because of my reputation. You don't have to figure things out before you come home. You don't have to clean up your mess before you come home. And that's the great thing about this story. Jesus always has open arms for people that have messy lives. You may have lost your way, but Jesus is telling you, you have not lost your value. You might be wandering, but you have not lost your importance to me. So whatever your past, whatever your struggle, Jesus is ready for you. He's just waiting for you to come home. That's all he's waiting for. He's not asking you to fix anything or clean anything up. So remember, this story about his father and his sons is communicating this one idea to you that you do not have to be fixed to be found. The son who came home was still a mess. You might still be a mess. Your friends might be in an absolute mess. But people can come home messy. And to those of us who are confident in the good things that we do, Jesus is kind of telling us in this story, your self-righteousness is just a different kind of mess. Your self-righteousness is a more accepted kind of mess, but it's still a mess. We need to remember that without Jesus, all of us are lost. But with Jesus, you don't have to be fixed to be found. God, thank you for this truth that all you're asking us to do to be in a right relationship with you is to come home.